Hey everybody, Nomalanga Mhlauli-Moses. I am here with my expert for today, Dr. John M. Beckham. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing?
Let me see. Do I call you John JB or Dr. Beckham? Because it depends on the day, right?
Right, absolutely. Whatever you feel comfortable
Uh,
with.
for the purposes of this video, I'll refer you to you as Dr. Beckham.
Beckham. Sounds good to me.
But I will also disclose that we are related through marriage. You're married to one of my favorite people on earth, Mrs. Beckham, Mrs. Yanka Beckham, who also happens to be my husband's sister. So
Right.
it's all good. But
So I thought they were going to see our features and say, "Oh, I see the similarity." Right,
the Zulu and the Xhosa, okay.
right.
But I'm really excited about this series because I've had the privilege of benefiting from a lot of good information for free from a finance expert, specifically a personal finance expert. And I thought it'd be great to give my audience the same privilege that I've had. And you've agreed to kind of answer questions as they come in. So before we do that, I just want to give everybody a chance to get to really know you. Your short bio says that you're an educator, which we know you're a college professor right now teaching finance, and you're also a personal finance expert and an entrepreneur. But I just want you to tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to talk about myself, but yeah, I'm a professor of finance, State University of New York, tenured. I'm also chairman and CEO for a very prominent real estate firm in New York. Um, and so I help individuals as well as families, and I even help corporations. I'm a part of SCORE, which is another business mentor, and I really help businesses from beginning to succession planning. So you might have some businesses that are in the infancy stage where they want to get off the ground and get secure funding and so forth, to even mid-sized to large companies that want to expand, grow, maybe go into international geographical locations or add employees. And so, it's basically about helping others. I'm very fortunate and blessed to escape the confines of my beginnings in Detroit, Michigan, to where I'm at now. And so, part of that is I feel a call and an obligation to give back to help others with their financial aspirations.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really appreciate about you, Dr. Beckham, is that you are also a husband and you're also a father. So when we talk about middle income Americans and helping them get their personal finances right, you're not thinking abstractly, you're not imagining what they're going through. You're actually talking about your own day-to-day process. You're also teaching students. So again, day-to-day process. You're also an entrepreneur, have built an extensive portfolio that I find remarkable.
Uh-huh.
So you're talking from experience and expertise combined, which is the best formula as far as I'm concerned.
Well, absolutely. So even when I was in college, I adored the professors who actually lived what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the professors would come in and say, "Hey, this is what your textbook says in theory, but let me tell you how it works in the real world." And so I wanted to emulate that, and those were some of the goals that I set for myself. You can't take someone on a journey that you have not been on yourself. I can give you some theoretical, how to get from here to Alaska, follow the map, but I've never been. But I can tell you the detail and intricacies to get from, New York to San Juan, to get from New York to Michigan, Ohio. I've traveled those roads. I've flown that flight path. So I can give you the nuances that are necessary, which gives you the successes as well as the failures that you might want to avoid, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but if you can add on to the wheel, that's how we get an automobile or a bus, or in my case, an airplane.
Absolutely. So you alluded to coming from Detroit, Michigan, and just a tiny bit gave us a little glimpse of, okay, so I didn't always have everything that I have today, and I feel blessed to have it. And again, that gives you more credibility, at least in my opinion, in that There'll be people who sometimes when you talk about the things that you've been able to accomplish would say, well, lucky you that you got that. But you can actually say you took all the steps it took to go from having hardly anything to really building something, whether it's your career, your accomplishments, or even monetarily. You really built it step by step from scratch, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I come from Detroit, and I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood. We didn't have much growing up. I did have a mother and father who loved me, and both of them were there in the home. You know, my father worked a lot of times evenings and afternoons, so I really didn't get a chance to see him until the weekend. Not a bad thing. I mean, he was working to support the family. He was in the household, but while he was at home sleeping, I was at school. And then when I come home, he was out at work. So we didn't have much. And for me, I was just driven because I wanted more. So I would go to the library, read the books of places that you can only dream of. And I would read case studies or biographies of very successful people. And so I would go out and pursue, at the time, millionaires and say, hey, I don't want none of your money. Don't give me anything. Just tell me, how did you do it? And so I was looking for the education piece. And I believe that if I was among 4 millionaires, that I would become the 5th. So now my belief is if I'm among 4 billionaires, I'll become the 5th billionaire. So it grows. So, never becoming complacent or stagnant. I can tell you personally of living, even when I was on my own, living in a place with no heat, in a 700 square foot house. And now I'm fortunate to have closets bigger than 700 square feet. But it's a process. And the largest thing is, it's 80% behavior and 20% knowledge. You have to change your thought process, your perspectives, gaining more knowledge and understanding, and even changing the people that you hang around. I always use the cliche, you got to change places, spaces, and associations. So I began to I wanted something different, so I did different things. I didn't want the same thing that my parents had, which is not bad. My parents lived a very full life. But I wanted more than anybody in my family, whether it was my parents, my aunts, my uncles, distant cousins, whatever. There was nobody around me that had the things that I was aspiring to obtain, both career-wise as well as financial. So I had to seek those things out. And as you begin to indulge in people relationships as well as the knowledge and education, because it is education piece, your thought process begins to enlarge. Your horizon becomes larger. And I was able to see the things that I wanted to obtain, that there was a methodology to them, a path. And that path is not prejudiced. It's not based upon color. It's not based upon sex, nationality, or ethnicity. It's based upon you putting in the work. And that was the turning point for me. Again, there's time, value money, which is actually a formula. Even though we come from the microwave generation, right? We have instant rice, popcorn, instant food, instant pudding, instant coffee. Building wealth is not instant. And those who actually obtain any significant amount of wealth instantly, whether it's through lottery or inheritance, they tend to lose it quickly. Money only magnifies where you are at in your life and who you are. So if you're a fool, you see those a lot of times with some of our athletes. They're getting a lot of money and they're doing foolish things with their money. It only magnifies who you are and where you're at in life. And you have to begin to look at money as a tool. So it's no different than my hammer or my screwdriver or my drill. Money is a tool to obtain or to get certain things done. It's no more, no less. I even look at money as being an employee. So I put it to work, and I expect my money to multiply and return back to me, my principal. And there's a couple of rules. Number one is don't lose money, your principal. And number two, remember rule number one. And there are a lot of avenues in which you can do that and not have to be super risky. So the idea of people becoming rich overnight, that's a faux pas. I mean, you're risking your livelihood, your family, a lot of times your morals and ethics to hit a long shot. I'd rather just be that batter that gets to first base every single time versus the guy who's swinging for the home run, who's going to strike out every 100 times for one hit that they get. And that's kind of how I built the empire, one brick at a time.
Absolutely. So you agreed to answer some questions, and I have a lot of stuff that I just took in while you were. So if you see me do this, because I'm writing,
okay,
taking notes, because I'm also here to learn. I have a question that I decided to bring up since we have a lot of questions coming in, and you will answer them as they come. But the one that I thought was interesting was somebody said, "What are some investment strategies for low income families?" And then they say, is it stocks and bonds? And before you answer it, I just want to go back to what you already said. You said that if you're going to build wealth and sustain it, 80% behavior and 20% knowledge. So really, the emphasis here is the knowledge, but I think we always have to keep hitting that point again of is the behavior, which I actually learned from you. I learned that from you that, okay, the reason why I'm not a billionaire right now is because of my behavior. and what that does for me, and I hope it does that for a lot of people, is it takes the responsibility away from anybody else and puts it on me. Because then that means if I change my behavior, then I can change my income. And if I change it, the better I become at changing my behavior, the better I become at building wealth, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I guess to answer your question in regard to what someone wrote in about investment strategies for low income, I first would start off with their personal finances before we even get to investment strategies. Number one, have they eliminated or minimized their debt? And there's good debt and there's bad debt, which is a difference between an asset and a liability. So an asset is anything that's going to put money in your pocket. So therefore, if you have a debt that is bringing in income, well, that could be considered a good debt. A liability is anything that's taking money out of your pocket. I like to keep it real simple. So therefore, if you have debt that's taking money out of your pocket, such as credit cards, department stores, automobiles, toys such as motorcycles, RVs, such and so forth, that's bad debt. There are liabilities, and a lot of times those things come because a person really can't afford it. And so they go out with someone giving them the debt to be able to secure these liabilities because they can afford the payment, but not afford the actual whatever they're trying to assume or mass, whether it be a car or clothes, or things of that nature. So the first thing is changing that behavior. I always recommend that people go to a Walmart, and I started this way. I got a little notebook that was maybe 2 inches by 2 inches, something that you can carry in your pocket. And I began to write down every single expenditure that happened per day. So if I went to the store today and I bought, 25-cent Wrigley gum, I wrote it down. If I, bought gasoline from an automobile, I wrote it down. Didn't matter how big or how little, I wrote it down. And after 30 days, I began to categorize what I was spending my money on. So I spent $400 on food. I spent $200 on gasoline. I spent, $300 on credit card debt. And it was kind of, segmented out of which credit cards. And so it gave me a clear picture of what my money was going to, how was it going, leaving my pockets. Mm-hmm. And so then you begin to really understand where the waste is at. What am I really wasting money? I helped one young lady. She said she couldn't afford a car. And I said, well, I think you can afford a car. You work at Home Depot, so I'm quite sure you probably can afford a car. Well, let's look at your expenditures. Well, number one, she bought coffee from Starbucks 3 times a day. And her average trip to Starbucks was $7.41. Wow. So you multiply that by 3 times a day. So you got, $22 per day going out, and that's 7 days a week, as well as she smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. So, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I assume they're probably somewhere around about $10 or something like that. So you add that up, $22 plus $10, that's $32 per day. Now you multiply that by 30 days, and you can see where if a person begin to change their habits, they can go ahead and be able to get the things that they're looking for without having to go into an enormous amount of debt. So getting back to the question, some investment vehicles. So once you understand how to reduce your expenditures, which automatically gives you more income, because income is based upon how much money you keep at the end of the day, not how much money you make. Some of the investment vehicles, and for a low income to middle income, most individuals do not understand equities. They don't understand the market. They don't understand how to read a prospectus, the price earnings for a company. They don't know any of the management in that company. They don't know the strategic plan from 3 months to 6 months to 1 year to 3 years. So you at a huge disadvantage if that is not your forte, is not your level of expertise. And so therefore, I recommend that if you got some extra income that you don't need to survive, and if you lost it all, it's not going to be the end of the world. I recommend the Vanguard S&P 500 Index Fund, the Admiral shares. And then
the Vanguard.
Vanguard is the institution, so it's no different than like a national bank or Merrill Lynch or whatever. Vanguard is just the institution. S&P stands for Standards & Poor's 500. So it's an S&P 500 index fund. And it's basically the top 500 companies that's within the market. They make up that particular index fund. And so there's a couple of reasons why I recommend that, especially for novice or people who are green when it comes to equities, markets, mutual funds, and so forth.
Which are most of us middle income people.
Absolutely. So number one, there is I'm trying to be politically correct. So there's a lie that a lot of brokers tell to get people to invest their money with them, right? Mm-hmm. So they say, well, the S&P 500 index, we use that as a standard. They say, well, over the course of the last 10 years, it made somewhere between 9 to 10%, right? And they'll say, well, last year I made 12%. You say, okay, well, good. You made 12%, and the index made, let's just say 9.5%. Well, that's not a true assessment, right? So now we start to say, okay, well, on that 12%, what was the fees that you charged? Was there any charges for every time you sold or bought, out of that whatever equity you were in? And there is usually a charge. What is your fees for maintaining or managing the fund, right? And so now you start to see where a broker is taking somewhere between 1 to 3%, sometimes even more. Well, now, let's subtract that 1 to 3% from the 12% that you said that you made. And so, okay, let's use 3% as the norm. So we go from 12% minus 3, and so now we're down to what, 9%, right? And so I say, okay, well, that made 9.5. You at 9%, but the story is not. That's only half the story, right? So last year they could have made 12%. Well, what did you make the year before that? Well, they could have made 6%. And what did you make the year before that? Say they were at 8%. So you have this up and down. And so what happens is you lose what's called compounding interest. And so on the year that they made 6%, that's pounded because you bring that to next year and they may make 8%. You got this jockeying up and down. And you look at what the delta is, the net income off of that is going to be far less than someone like the S&P 500 index that's consistently doing around 9 to 10% every single year. And that is compounded, not including that the fees are 0.04 in comparison to someone who's paying between 1 to 3%. Also, you don't have to manage it. It's not one of those funds I want to go look at every single day and have to worry about. So what is the broker going to say? Well, you need to have some international exposure. I said, well, you do have international exposure, right? Name one Fortune 500 company that's not international. So if I look at, IBM, well, they're in North America, U.S. They also overseas, Europe and other places. If you look at Google and some of the other countries, there is no company that's going to be in the Fortune 500 that doesn't have international exposure. So I say, well, check, I got that. They said, well, then you need diversity. You shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket. Well, if you look at the Fortune 500, that's across all types of industries, whether you're looking at tech, whether you're looking at utilities, whether you're looking at retail, manufacturing. So you are diverse. So basically now you're starting to think for yourself and protect your own self, right? So you don't really see high swings or low dips when S&P 500 is pretty much straight and narrow and very steady. And you can go back and research that the last 40, 50, 60 years, and you will find this continuity to be true. So that's where I would start at, to kind of long way around bring the question. I like to give education, not just to tell a person, select this, select that. They say, well, why? Well, because I told you so. No, if a person begin to understand how to fish versus me giving them a fish, they can go out any day of the week and find the fish and fish for themselves, and they know why they're doing it. And so that's my approach. I like to give the education that your broker's not giving you.
Absolutely. And this what I'm here for, is to break it down to layman's terms. So basically what you're saying is, and you can correct me if I'm not summarizing it correctly. What you're saying is, if I was interested, again, just a regular, call me a stay-at-home mom, nothing more than that. I have some money and I'm interested in the stock market and I want to get in on this thing because I know that people have done this and done it successfully, but I don't know what to do. So you're saying, okay, maybe a stockbroker is going to come in and try to take advantage of me. And what they're taking advantage of is my ignorance. And I'm willfully telling them I'm ignorant, right? So when they tell me, okay, look, you can get 10% back or 12% back on your money, I should start asking intelligent questions, okay? So you're saying that's what I can get now. I should ask, what's the history of what that investment has gotten in past years, and what are you predicting for the future?
And most importantly, what are the fees?
And yes, and then also the catch. What's the catch? Because
absolutely,
nobody's gonna just let you in on something for nothing. So then,
and also, how does the fund pay taxes? Right? So that's another big question to ask. If you come in the month of December, do you pay the same taxes as everyone who's been in the fund since January? How often is this person who's managing this fund is in and out, because that's going to have tax implications. And that's why I like the Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. I mean, it even gives you dividends. So these are dividend paying companies, Fortune 500 companies. So every quarter you're going to receive some type of dividend, which I would highly recommend that you have automatically reinvested.
What exactly are dividends for those of us who don't necessarily know what that means?
So a dividend is it's almost like a profit sharing. That's basically what it is. So a company has outperformed what they thought they were going to do, and so now they're going to share the profit back with the shareholder, because as a shareholder, you are essentially owners of the company. And so instead of just saying, hey, we're going to give you this check, they pay it out in dividends in comparison or ratio to how many shares of stock you have. And I highly recommend reinvesting. So instead of taking a check, which can be, 30 cents for every stock you have, 40 cents or whatever the case might be, just reinvest it, because the thing is you want growth. And I would stay away from, and this is something that people can do themselves. So you can go on to, Vanguard.com and open up an account. And there's many ways you can do. If you're not fully invested as far as retirement, I would start off with something as simple as a Roth IRA, right? So a Roth IRA means that you've already paid taxes on your dollars that you receive, because this is your net after your paycheck. And now you're going to invest it in a Roth IRA. Roth individual retirement account. And the reason why I like it is because even though it has limits of, I think it's 5,500 currently, and if you're over a certain age, you can do 6,500. It's a nice way to start, and your principal in the worst case scenario, you have access to it. So if you hold it to 59 and a half or older, when you get ready to withdraw the money from the Roth IRA, you don't pay taxes on it because you've already paid taxes. Number two, say, calamity happened next year and you've invested, this 5,500. Well, if your money has grown from 5,500, let's say to $7,000, you don't have access to the whole 7,000, but you can withdraw anything you've put into it. So if you've only put in 5,500, you can totally withdraw the whole $5,500 without any penalty, right? But the remaining 2,000, I think I said 7,500 as an example, the other $2,000, which is your growth, you have to leave that in there until you're 59 and a half. So it gives you options. It gives you a nice introduction into the equities or the stock market, if you will. I would stay away from the mutual funds because there's a lot of hidden fees, whether it's a no-load mutual fund or front load or back load. There are too many other better options. And these are just personal opinions. A person has the freedom to go and choose whatever investment vehicle they select. But you're asking me, so I'm giving you my personal opinion on how to minimize your risk, maximize your income or your growth and investment, and still have access to it until you begin to learn a little bit more education-wise of the different things in regards to the markets.
Yeah, just on the point of your opinion versus my opinion, I'd take his opinion over mine or anybody else's for that matter, because it's well vetted and it's credible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And while we're talking about this, I know that there is a historical culture that have taught us, put your money in a savings account, and that's the best thing to do. And I would disagree with that. If you look at current bank accounts, most of them are paying less than 1%. It's very minuscule what they're paying. Even some of the upper echelon banks that are usually only online only are right around 1%. You might be able to get 1%. So you're making 1% on your money invested while the bank turns around and utilize your dollars. For every $1 you put in, they can generate $10 worth of debt. Secondly, there's a thing that's called cost of living or inflation, which is around about 2.5%. So what doesn't change is your measurement. So a gallon of gasoline, the measurement is always going to be a gallon. But how much it costs to purchase that gallon is going to change. So if you look at $1 during my father's time, they can pay anywhere between a nickel to a quarter for a gallon of gas. It's still a gallon. Now that gallon of gas, if you're in the New York area, is going to cost you almost $3. If you're somewhere else, it's going to be whatever. But the metric didn't change. The gallon didn't change. It's still a gallon, but the cost of what it costs to secure that gallon changed. So there's a thing called inflation, and it usually increases about 2.5% a year. So in other words, that same $3 today that you can buy a gallon is probably going to cost you more money next year to buy the same gallon. So what am I saying? So if you're only receiving 1% or less in a savings account and inflation is at 2.5, you automatically losing at least 1.5% on your money just sitting in a bank. Mm-hmm. So you always want to at least keep up with the rate of inflation. So that means you're just keeping everything equal, zero. And when you go above that 2.5, that's when you actually get into your money being able to grow. I kind of like saying, I'm sending my dollars to go out and multiply and bring back more dollars. And that's what I do. And how do you do that? Because I invest in assets and I eliminate liabilities.
Absolutely. So really what you're doing when you leave your money in a savings account is you're losing it.
You're losing money.
You're losing over time, right?
Yeah, you're losing money over time. And, anyone can Google that and find the mathematical formula or a chart to help you to visualize it better. But, the things that I say, go out and fact check it. I'm one individual that's giving you, my opinion, which is usually based by a lot of fact and research and experience. But I always tell people, don't take anyone's word at face value. Go out and research it for yourself. Actually, you'll find out most of the stuff that's in the media is about 1% correct. So you want to get in the habit of being able to say, hey, okay, there's some validity to what's saying, and how is that going to best be applicable to myself and or my family.
Great information. I think just from that one question, we got maybe 5, 6, 7 other questions answered for those of us that are in learning mode. So I really appreciate that. But I want to give our audience a chance to be able to get more of what you're offering. And so I know that you have a blog at your website, which is at drjohnbeckem.com. And the direct link is personalfinanceblueprint.com. So if you go to personalfinanceblueprint.com, you're going to get more of this information. And the only thing you really have to do is get on the newsletter. So you can just get the information in your inbox. So again, that's at drjohnbeckem.com, or you can go directly to the blog at personalfinanceblueprint.com. There's more. I happen to have, again, the front row seat to a developing program at the Personal Finance Institute, which is at Teachable. And what's going to happen here is basically going to be information that you can subscribe to and get. Like I said, for this purpose, I have my learning hat on. So I'm all ears and learning, and I have a front row seat to it. And again, I'll share that link in the comment section of how you can sign up ahead of time. And by the time the course goes up, you'll have signed up to get the information as it comes up. So that's the Personal Finance Institute, founded again by Dr. John Beckem here, willing to share lots and lots of information. So Dr. Beckem, I appreciate your time. More than anything, I appreciate the information that you shared. I'm looking forward to much, much, much more, because for me, as far as my family is concerned, as far as future generations are concerned, there's no information that I think is more important as far as building your finances than the information you can get from a personal finance expert.
Yeah, and people need to really consider when they're making decisions, who's it going to best benefit? Is it going to benefit the person who's giving something to me, or is it going to benefit myself? You know, for example, think about credit cards. You know, credit card debt. And how our society look at credit cards, right? So I'm considered socially elite because I have a black card, right? Versus someone who might have a Capital One card with a credit limit of $300. So I'm celebrated and rewarded by having a plethora of debt at my fingertips, right? Versus someone who's looked down upon because they only have a $300 credit card limit. And when you really think about it, which one is more advantageous? To have an insurmountable amount of debt, right, that you're paying someone an interest with. And by the way, credit card debt is daily compounded interest. Every single day, your principal is going to change if you're not paying on it, versus the difference between a car loan or a mortgage that can be compounded every 15 to 30 days. McDonald's did this study several years ago to see how much would a person spend if they paid cash versus if they paid by credit card. And they found out that the person who spent by credit card spent an average of about $7 more than the individual who paid by cash. Because, you know, if you go in by cash, you say, wow, you know, I got this $20. I really hate to break it. So give me the value meal, right? $5, $6. Versus someone who comes in with a credit card to say, hey, you know, it's not really real money to them, right? I deal with it at the end of the month. Matter of fact, give me that value meal, supersize it. And you know what? My girl and my boy behind me, put theirs on mine too. And so because they found out that the average person spent $7 more than the person who spent cash, they started putting credit card logos everywhere. It's on the billboard out front. It's on the door. They even put a credit card sliding machine at the drive-through window. because there is a psychological behavior in connection with cash in your fingers, right? Most people know if I break that $100 bill, I kiss it goodbye. So you try not to break it as long as possible. And so I challenge people to start looking at the behaviors and the implications that it has and really say, well, society says that this is great for me to have all this debt at my exposure, but who is it really benefiting? Is it benefiting the credit card companies charging you 23% or more daily compounded? And by the way, would give you what, 1% cash back? You know, like it's a joke. Versus saying, hey, you know what, you keep your high price credit card. I might take a $300 credit card to use for hotels or whatever, but I have $100 bills, Benjamins at my disposal. And I'm very careful who I give my Benjamins to. You know, in experience, I've been poor, I've been rich, and rich is so much better. You know, and that's a thought process to really think about and how you make your decisions for you, your family, and the generations to come, you know, because the ideal is to build generational wealth.
Right, right, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Again, guys, I encourage you to go to drjohnbeckem.com and subscribe there so that you can get the newsletter and get more of this information. And again, I'll share a link to the Personal Finance Institute so that when the courses get rolled out, you're able to take advantage of that. And again, I want to say thank you to Dr. John Beckem. This is something that I asked him to do and he agreed. So I really appreciate that we're getting this information, and I hope you guys understand the value of it and understand that there are people who are paying out of their noses to get access to Dr. John Beckem. So thank you very much, Dr. Beckem.
Yeah, my going rate is $500 an hour.
Yeah, so for this last 30 minutes, $250. You can thank him later. You can thank him later. But again, thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon with more information.
Have a good day.